Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos. The main character, after dying in his previous life, he wakes up inside of Hazbin Hotel as the 6'3", blue eyes, alive Gojo. What is he gonna do inside of Hazbin Hotel?
City, every street marked with an obligation. The route to the meeting was the only path without a toll. The invitation had been designed to make refusal look like trespass. Gojo folded the map in half. Blue pulled the hidden ink into a knot and dropped it into the courier's empty hand. Take this back. They will call it an insult. Then they understood the message. Vaggie watched the courier disappear into the crowd. Why not go? Because they offered a room where they control the doors. Gojo turned toward the hotel. When they want a conversation, they can send a chair. The courier returned before sunset, carrying a plain chair and no envelope. Gojo laughed once and brought it into the lobby. Whatever the overlords wanted, they would have to speak where Charlie's doors remained visible. At a shuttered theater in Pentagram City, Gojo set one hand against the nearest surface and let the 6 eyes read the law's hell had embedded in it. Charlie, Vaggie, and 3 overlord envoys watched the experiment with different kinds of fear. The envoys offered Gojo protection in exchange for a public declaration that the hotel belonged under their influence. The first test stopped at infinity. The second reached the space beneath it. Gojo smiled only when the third revealed a condition he could name. You are not offering protection, Gojo said. You are buying the right to call the threat yours. He changed the experiment instead of increasing the force. Charlie refused to let the hotel become a bargaining chip, even when one envoy promised to erase the district's outstanding debts. Vaggie called the result reckless. Gojo agreed, then marked the safe boundary in chalk where everyone could see it. The measurement demanded a price. The hotel lost a profitable supply route when the envoys withdrew their support. Reverse cursed technique repaired the damage, but not the information it had purchased. The scene closed when Gojo left the contracts unsigned and the theater lights burning for anyone who wanted to read the terms. Gojo kept the boundary visible and did not pretend the next test would be safer. The chair the overlords had sent became a problem before anyone sat in it. Charlie wanted to put it in the lobby because accepting the object without accepting the invitation felt, to her, like the closest thing hell had to diplomacy. Vaggie wanted it thrown into the furnace. Husk wanted to know whether either option required him to move it. Angel wanted to know whether the velvet could be removed and used for something less political. Gojo stood over the chair with his hands in his pockets and let the 6 eyes peel its construction apart. The frame was ordinary oak. The brass nails were not. Each one had been stamped with a different territory mark and hammered through a ribbon of contract paper hidden beneath the upholstery. Anyone who sat in it would not agree to an alliance. The trick was smaller and more irritating. The chair would record which territory the sitter instinctively faced while speaking. Hell would call the result evidence of preference. They sent a poll, Gojo said. Vaggie stared at him. They sent a trap. A poll with consequences. Charlie circled the chair, careful not to touch it. Can we remove the contract without destroying the chair? Probably. Probably. The fun answer is yes. The accurate answer depends on whether Alastair has already been listening through it. Static crackled from a radio on the bar. Husk closed his eyes. Of course he has. Alastair's voice arrived bright and pleased. My dear fellow, one should never blame the furniture for the ambitions of its owners. Gojo looked toward the radio, then stopped sitting inside it. The static vanished. Angel snorted. I hate that I understood that. Charlie fetched a screwdriver from the maintenance cabinet. Gojo expected her to hand it to him. Instead, she knelt beside the chair and started removing the first brass nail herself. Vaggie crouched beside her. Charlie, if this hotel is going to accept things from people who don't like us, we should learn how to inspect them without doing everything. Gojo's smile faded by half a degree. It was the right decision, which made it more irritating than being thanked. Good, he said. Start with the nail on the back left. The one on the right bites. Charlie froze with her fingers near the wrong nail and changed sides. They turned the work into a lesson because Hell refused to let ordinary maintenance remain ordinary. Vaggie learned which stamped lines tightened when pressure was applied. Angel discovered the contract paper smelled like burnt sugar when it was active. Husk identified a wax seal from a gambling house that had been buying cheap influence from minor overlords. Nifty found 3 hidden needles and named them before anyone could ask how she knew they were there. By the time the upholstery came free, the chair looked less like a diplomatic gift and more like a crime scene. Charlie spread the hidden ribbons across the lobby table. They all signed it, she said. Not together, Gojo replied. Look at the ink, different days, different hands. They built the trap by passing the chair around until nobody owned the whole idea. Vaggie understood first. So if it gets exposed, each of them can say they only added one harmless part. Exactly. Husk poured himself a drink. That's how every bad business partnership in Hell works. Charlie looked at the chair frame. Then we send it back. Gojo tilted his head. Why? Because it is theirs. The wood isn't. The contract is. She looked at him. Gojo tapped one finger against the bare frame. Keep the chair. Return the paper. The idea made Vaggie's mouth twitch despite herself. Charlie wrote a note in her own handwriting and attached it to the ribbons. Thank you for the chair. We removed the parts that tried to make choices for us. Please ask next time. Angel leaned over her shoulder. Add that the velvet is ugly. No. Coward. They sent the contract, strips back by the same courier who had delivered the chair. He looked at the exposed frame, the bundle of clauses, and Charlie's note with the expression of a man who had discovered his employers had made him carry an insult in both directions. They are going to be angry, he said. Charlie smiled. They were angry before they sent it. Gojo watched him leave and felt the city react through its invisible threads. 3 territories received the same returned paper. 3 sets of people began blaming one another for whose claws had been discovered first. A meeting that had been designed to classify the hotel had instead taught the hotel how overlords shared liability. That evening, Charlie asked the residents where the chair should go. The vote was almost unanimous. They placed it beside the front door. Not as a trophy, as a place where visitors could sit while waiting to be admitted. Vaggie added a small plaque beneath it. This chair records nothing. Gojo read the plaque twice. That's almost aggressive, he said. Good, Vaggie replied. The next morning, the first person to sit in it was a terrified sinner carrying a grocery bag and no political value at all. He waited there while Charlie found him a room. The chair did nothing. Gojo considered that a better use than the overlords had imagined. Chapter 17. The Overlord's Notice. The closed viewing room held 6 overlords and 1 wall of screens. Vox paused the footage on Gojo's face. Valentino complained about the angle. Velvet complained about the lighting. Carmilla watched the frozen image without blinking. Zestial and Rossi listened to the room become louder around them. He is a sinner, Vox said. Then why did the contract needle stop? Carmilla asked. No one answered. The screen flickered. Gojo appeared in the reflection behind them, though the room contained no reflective surface. Vox spun toward the glass. The image smiled. You are discussing me badly. Velvet reached for the control panel. Every screen turned white. Blue pulled the signal through the room, leaving the cameras intact, but removing their ability to classify what they recorded. Valentino's men drew weapons. Carmilla stopped them with one raised hand. This is a viewing room, Zestial said, not a battlefield. Then stop pointing weapons at the guest you invited without his consent. Gojo replied through the screens. Vox restored one monitor. You want attention. No, I want accurate attention. You keep mistaking the two. The feed cut. On the largest screen, a single sentence remained. He is not property. Rosie smiled faintly. That will make the city curious. Curiosity is cheaper than ownership, Carmilla said. In the hotel lobby, Gojo released the stolen signal. Charlie asked whether he had just challenged every overlord in the city. No, he said. They challenged one another. I only gave them a better screen. A public answer was demanded at a balcony above the hotel lobby. Alastair, Vox's watcher, and Vaggie with her spear ready stood where the crowd could see them, while every faction tried to make the answer sound like a confession. They are not describing me, Gojo said. They are rehearsing what they want the city to believe. 3 different broadcasts described Gojo as an asset, a weapon, and Charlie's property. Gojo let the silence last until the people who had prepared the question began to hear how little of it belonged to them. Charlie spoke before Gojo could turn the moment into a lesson. Gojo turned the hotel's front sign into a public notice that guests could leave without owing him anything. Her choice changed the crowd's shape and left Gojo responsible for supporting it rather than replacing it. The political price arrived immediately. The notice made the hotel look weaker to opportunists who only respected ownership. No one called the result a victory because victory would have made the next demand easier to hide. Instead, the broadcasts continued, but every version of Gojo now carried the same inconvenient sentence about freedom. The hotel gained no throne, only another night in which its residents could decide what kind of place it would be. The overlords did not agree on what the blank screen meant. Vox called it intrusion. Carmilla called it a systems failure. Velvet called it bad branding. Rosie called it a gift because nothing in Pentagram City attracted attention faster than a room full of powerful people admitting they did not understand something. Zestial waited until the others had finished talking. The question is not what he is, he said. The question is what changes because we cannot name him. That silenced the room more effectively than Gojo had. Carmilla was the first to answer. Territory contracts become unreliable around him. Broadcast assumptions become unreliable, Vox said reluctantly. Rosie smiled. Fear becomes less useful if nobody knows what shape to give it. Valentino rolled his eyes. He still bleeds. Everything with a body can be priced eventually. Carmilla looked at him. That sentence is why you keep losing negotiations to people you think are beneath you. The meeting ended without a shared policy. That was exactly what Gojo wanted. At the hotel, Charlie asked how he had reached the screens. Followed the signal backward. Through Vox's network. Mostly. Vaggie crossed her arms. Mostly. Gojo pointed toward the old hotel radio wiring. Alastair's broadcast path overlapped it for 3 blocks. Vox was watching Alastair watch me. I used the overlap. The radio on the bar turned itself on. Alastair's voice was cheerful. You used my signal as a hallway. You left the door open. How impolite. You were spying. Observing. Husk muttered, everyone in this city needs a hobby. Charlie looked less interested in the technical trick than in what came next. Are they going to attack? Gojo shrugged, not together. How do you know? Because they all learned different things from the same failure. He was right. The next week brought no coordinated strike. Instead, every overlord tested a different edge. Carmilla sent a courier offering a piece of unmarked angelic steel with no contract attached. Gojo returned the steel and asked for the testing conditions instead. Rosie sent a basket of food containing 3 harmless gifts and 1 envelope that would reveal who opened it first. Charlie opened it in front of everyone and ruined the trick. Vox bought advertising space across from the hotel and ran footage of Gojo's blank classification file until the joke became boring. Velvet sent influencers to ask residents whether Gojo made them feel safe. Vaggie posted the answers publicly, including the ones that said no. Valentino tried the direct route. He sent 2 men to the hotel, carrying Angel's name. They did not claim Angel owed anything. They claimed Valentino wanted to know whether Gojo would intervene in a private employment matter. Angel heard the phrase from upstairs and came down furious. Private my ass. Gojo stayed near the bar. The messengers expected him to take over. He didn't. Angel walked to the front desk and asked for the document. It was a work schedule, nothing more. The hours were awful but legal under the contract Angel still held at the time. The messengers had expected Gojo to tear it, proving that the hotel interfered with Valentino's recognized agreements. Angel read the page. Tell him no. One messenger smiled. Then you are in breach. No, I'm unavailable those hours under the injury clause. Check the 4th Amendment. The smile vanished. Husk coughed into his glass to hide a laugh. Angel slid the schedule back. Next time he sends you to bait my scary friend, charge him extra. The messengers left. Gojo looked at Angel. Scary friend. Don't make it weird. That incident changed the hotel more than the Overlord meeting did. Residents began bringing their own problems to the front desk instead of waiting for Gojo to solve them. Charlie turned one side room into a records office. Vaggie created a rule that no outside demand could be delivered privately to a vulnerable resident without at least one witness if the resident wanted one. Husk kept a list of brokers known for changing verbal terms after the fact. None of it looked powerful, which made it difficult for overlords to attack without admitting they were threatened by paperwork and witnesses. Gojo stood in the new records room one evening while Charlie pinned the blank classification screenshot to the wall. Why keep that? Because it started this. It started because Vox can't design a flexible database. Same thing, apparently. Gojo looked at the wall. Blank category, contract clinic notices, observer routes, copies of corrected rumors, not trophies, tools. Outside, the city still did not know what Gojo was. Inside, the hotel was learning it did not need the answer first. Chapter 18. The Overlord's Invitation. The Red Carpet Club had been prepared for a ceremony. Velvet ropes divided the floor, a brass band played too loudly, and Valentino's men waited beside a table covered in champagne and contract bracelets. Velvet raised a glass when Gojo entered. A formal welcome. A formal trap, Gojo said. Alastair's shadow moved across the far wall, listening without pretending not to. Velvet offered Gojo a bracelet. The metal would have looked decorative on anyone else. 6 eyes saw it recording every touch, every toast, and every public agreement. Gojo lifted the bracelet by its ribbon. You want the room to believe. I accepted your hospitality. We want the room to believe you understand how important you are. Those are different failures. One of Valentino's men lunged. The bracelet snapped open, releasing a red thread toward Gojo's wrist. Infinity stopped it. Blue pulled the thread through the table, and the contract bracelets clattered together like teeth. The band stopped playing. Velvet's smile sharpened. You could have worn it. You could have asked. Alastair's shadow applauded once. Gojo turned the contract thread toward Valentino's men. The hidden clause surfaced. Anyone who accepted the bracelet owed a favor to the person who placed it. The men backed away from their own hands. Gojo dropped the metal into the champagne bucket. The liquid boiled without heat. Send the bill to whoever paid for the room. Velvet looked at the watching crowd. You came to embarrass us. You arranged the audience. He left the club while the band restarted with a different song. Behind him, Alastair's shadow remained on the wall, and the overlords learned that ceremony could become evidence when the guest refused the part written for him. The room at a velvet negotiation room beneath an overlord casino had been arranged to make the decision look inevitable. Gojo, Husk, and a contract lawyer named Ravel had been given separate seats, separate exits, and one shared document nobody trusted. Ravel presented a territory agreement whose harmless clauses became predatory when read together. Gojo read the space before he read the paper. 6 eyes found the pressure points. Who could leave, who would be blamed, and which silence had been purchased. Read the margins, Husk muttered. That is where they hide the knife. The first answer came from someone other than Gojo. Gojo made Ravel explain every clause aloud, while Blue held the contract open between them. The change forced the people in the room to stop treating him as the hotel's spokesman. The consequence arrived before anyone signed. The lawyer burned the agreement and sent the casino's security after them. Gojo did not undo that consequence. He made sure everyone understood why it had happened. When the meeting ended, Husk kept the ash in a bottle because the erased terms were still evidence. The hotel remained standing, but its next choice would belong to more than one person. The club did not recover when Gojo left. It remained open, technically. The band started again. Drinks were poured. Velvet returned to smiling for the cameras, but the bracelets stayed in the champagne bucket where Gojo had dropped them and nobody reached for another one. The problem with public humiliation, Velvet discovered, was that people remembered the exact second confidence became performance. She waited until the last ordinary guest had been pushed toward the exits before locking the doors. "Get Valentino," she told one of the staff. "He's already here." Valentino emerged from behind the private curtain with smoke curling around his face. "You let him make us look stupid." Velvet laughed once. "Us, you put your contract men on a stage and they lunged before I finished the welcome. He was insulting us. He was baiting you, different thing." The wall screens flickered. Vox appeared on all of them at once. "Both of you shut up." The remaining staff froze. Vox replayed the encounter without sound. Gojo lifting the bracelet, the red thread stopping. Blue pulling every hidden favor clause into the open. Valentino's men backing away from the contracts they had expected other people to wear. "He didn't destroy the feed," Vox said. Velvet looked toward the largest screen. "I noticed." "No, you noticed that he embarrassed us. I'm telling you what he actually did. He left the feed intact on purpose." Valentino exhaled smoke, "Because he likes attention." "Because he likes evidence," Vox snapped. He wanted every minor broker, every independent seller, every wannabe overlord watching the replay to see that the bracelet wasn't hospitality. Velvet's expression sharpened. Vox enlarged the moment where the hidden clause surfaced. "He didn't beat the contract, he explained it. That's worse." For the first time that evening, nobody argued. Across the city, the explanation was already costing money. 3 minor venues cancelled bracelet arrangements before midnight. 2 brokers demanded clearer language in their hospitality agreements. A gambling hall returned a shipment of decorative rings because its owner suddenly feared being accused of hiding favors inside them. None of those people had become ethical. They had become afraid of being caught using a trick everyone now recognized. At the hotel, Charlie received the first complaint before breakfast. A woman with red feathers and one broken horn stood in the lobby, clutching a gold bracelet in both hands. "I wore this 6 months ago," she said. "I thought it was entry to a club." Vaggie inspected it without touching. "Whose club?" The woman named one of Valentino's smaller properties. Gojo came down the stairs halfway through the explanation, hair still wet from a shower and sunglasses pushed up on his head. The bracelet reacted to him from across the room. A fine red line tightened around the woman's wrist. She flinched. There, Gojo said. Charlie looked between them. Can you remove it? The woman answered before he could. What happens if he does? Gojo smiled slightly. Better question. He crouched beside her and let the 6 eyes follow the bond. The bracelet did not own her soul. It owned a single favor that had never been collected. The wording let the owner choose when the favor came due and what counted as equivalent value. You owe them something, Gojo said. You do not owe them anything they can imagine. The woman's shoulders loosened and tightened again. What does that mean? It means the agreement is real. The interpretation is predatory. Vaggie crossed her arms. Can the interpretation be cut away? Yes. And the favor stays unless she chooses to challenge the whole thing. The woman stared at the bracelet. I drank there. I danced there. I knew the bracelet came with a favor. I just didn't know the favor could be my apartment, my job, or a year of my life. Charlie knelt on her other side. Then, what did you think you were agreeing to? 1 night of work, maybe 2. Gojo touched the air above the bracelet. Blue formed as a thread so fine even Charlie could barely see it. The contract stretched open without breaking. The broad interpretation peeled away first. Property, residence, future earnings, bodily access, indefinite labor. The original favor remained beneath it, ugly but limited. The woman watched, every clause separate. That's it, she asked. That's what you actually said yes to. She breathed through her teeth. I hate that I still owe it. Good. Hatred is more useful when it points at the correct thing. Charlie gave him a look. Gojo shrugged. What? She can challenge it. The woman did not. Not yet. She asked for a copy. That request changed the morning. By noon, 3 more people arrived carrying bracelets. Then 6, then 14. The hotel lobby became an accidental contract clinic. Charlie organized chairs. Vaggie created a weapons table so nobody carried knives into an argument. Husk started charging outsiders for coffee, and then angrily stopped when Charlie reminded him that the hotel was trying not to attach debts to hospitality. Angel recognized 2 of the bracelet styles and spent 20 minutes swearing at Valentino by name. Gojo did not fix every contract. He refused. Instead, he taught people how to read the first layer themselves. Look for clauses that change definitions after signing. Look for undefined words such as service, harm, protection, reasonable, loyalty. Look for a right granted to only one side. Look for a deadline that existed only for the weaker party. By evening, the hotel had a wall covered in copied clauses and handwritten warnings. Charlie stood in front of it, exhausted. This wasn't the plan. Plans are what people call expectations before reality gets bored, Gojo said. Angel pointed at one clause with the end of a marker. This one says, reasonable personal appearance. That's porn. Vaggie rubbed her forehead. We know. I am helping. The woman with the broken horn left carrying her narrowed favor agreement and a hotel room key she had not expected to accept. She stopped at the front door. If they come for the favor. Gojo looked at her. Then you decide whether you pay what you actually promised. If they ask for more, make them say it where someone else can hear. She nodded and stepped into the rain. That night, Vox watched the line outside the hotel through a stolen street camera. He did not see a rebellion. He saw something more dangerous to an economy built on hidden terms, people comparing contracts. Chapter 19. The Overlords Meet Gojo. Carmilla's balcony overlooked half of Pentagram City. Zestial stood near the railing. Rosie brought tea nobody touched. Vox, Velvet, and Valentino occupied the couches as though furniture could decide rank. Gojo arrived, without using the stairs. You could have knocked, Carmilla said. You could have chosen a door that wanted me. Vox offered money. Valentino offered influence. Velvet offered a public campaign that would make Gojo famous. Zestial offered silence. Rosi offered information about which territories would become dangerous first. Gojo listened to each offer and asked one question. What do you receive? The answers were different words for the same thing. Access, leverage, ownership, proof that he could be placed inside an existing order. Carmilla finally set down her cup. What do you want? A city that stops pretending its rules are natural. That is not a negotiation. It is the reason your negotiation is failing. Vox sent a small surveillance drone through the balcony door. Infinity stopped it. Blue folded the machine into the empty teacup without breaking the porcelain. Rosi laughed. Gojo returned the cup to the table. If you want information, ask. If you want control, bring something capable of taking it. Zestial's eyes narrowed. And if we agree to neither, then you remain interesting until you stop. He left the same way he entered. Below, the city lights shifted as the overlords began sending different reports to different allies. Carmilla watched the balcony after he vanished. He did not ask for territory, she said. That may be the danger, Zestial answered. The first movement at a circular chamber with no visible exits was fast enough to make the watching crowd believe the scene had already chosen its winner. Gojo, Carmilla's delegate, Zizi's representative, and Alastair were caught between the threat and the people behind them. If you want a fight, Gojo said, stop pretending the chairs are neutral. The overlords demanded a demonstration of power and arranged the chamber so every answer could be called aggression. Gojo moved only after the danger revealed its condition. Infinity caught the obvious attack. Blue answered the hidden angle. The final decision was left to the person standing nearest the exit. That person chose badly, then chose again. He used Infinity to stop every weapon without touching the people holding them, then made the room's hidden exits visible. Vaggy's weapon, Charlie's voice, or a stranger's hand changed the result before Gojo could make the easy answer permanent. The cost was visible in the ground, the broken object, and the people who would have to return tomorrow. The overlords lost the advantage of surprise, but gained proof that the hotel could not be intimidated privately. By the time the street quieted, the meeting ended with no alliance and a new rule that all future invitations had to name their observers. The witnesses had seen power, but they had also seen someone refuse to use all of it. Carmilla's meeting produced one result: none of the overlords admitted publicly. They began reading their own contracts more carefully. Rosi discovered two old hospitality clauses that technically allowed rival cannibals to claim dining rights during funerals. Zestial's clerks found a boundary agreement signed by someone dead for 80 years. Carmilla suspended 3 weapons leases because the collateral language could be interpreted as ownership of the bearer's hands. Vox found nothing wrong with any of his agreements. That was because his lawyers were afraid to tell him. Gojo learned all of this through rumors, because Hell had no concept of private embarrassment. He found it hilarious. Charlie did not. People could get hurt if those contracts are wrong. People were already getting hurt. The fun part is that now the powerful ones have to imagine it happening to them. That isn't fun. Different definitions. The hotel's own problem arrived 2 days later. A maintenance contract for the elevator had been signed years before Charlie took control of the building. The company still existed. The contract still charged the hotel monthly. The elevator did not. Husk discovered this after spending 20 minutes trapped between floors. He emerged through the emergency hatch furious enough to frighten Angel. We are paying them. Charlie took the invoice. For what? Apparently for the privilege of falling slower. Gojo read the contract. It was perfectly legal. The company guaranteed continuity of vertical access infrastructure. It did not guarantee motion, safety, repair time, or a functioning elevator. As long as the shaft remained physically accessible, the contract considered service delivered. Charlie stared at the clause. That is evil. Husk poured a drink. It's business. Gojo smiled. Same thing sometimes. They could cancel. The termination fee was 6 times the annual maintenance charge. Charlie wanted Gojo to find a loophole. Gojo wanted Charlie to decide whether she was asking him to cheat a contract because the hotel had finally found one it disliked. That argument lasted longer than expected. They aren't providing the service. They're providing exactly the service the paper defines. That's dishonest. Yes. Then why are you defending it? I'm not. I'm asking whether your rule is contracts should mean what people knowingly agree to, or contracts should disappear when Charlie hates them. Charlie went quiet. Vaggie looked between them and wisely left the room. The answer was unpleasant. The hotel had inherited the agreement. The language was predatory, but the obligation was real unless they challenged it through Hell's commercial court or negotiated a release. So they negotiated. The elevator company sent a manager with polished horns and a smile designed to survive complaints. The infrastructure remains accessible, he said. Husk put a broken pulley on the table. Climb it. Charlie kept the meeting from becoming assault. Gojo barely helped. He asked the manager to demonstrate what service the hotel received each month. The manager cited inspections. Charlie asked for the inspection records. There were none for the past 18 months. The contract did not require the company to provide copies unless requested in writing. The hotel had no dedicated legal clerk for this kind of request, so Gojo wrote it himself and made Charlie check the wording before it went out. The records arrived the next day. They showed 6 inspections, marked completed by an employee who had died before Charlie reopened the hotel. Now the problem changed. Not a bad contract. Fraud. The company manager returned without the smile. Charlie did not demand the contract vanish. She demanded repayment for the false inspections, immediate repairs, and a new agreement defining actual performance requirements. The company refused the first draft. Husk refused the second. Gojo suggested throwing the elevator into the street. Everyone ignored him. The final deal took 3 days. The hotel paid a lower maintenance fee. The company guaranteed maximum repair windows, physical safety tests, and public inspection logs. Either side could terminate after repeated failure without the absurd penalty. The elevator worked again. On its first trip, Charlie, Vaggie, Angel, Husk, Nifty, and Gojo all packed inside to test it. The doors closed. The elevator moved 1 floor. Stopped. Everyone looked at Gojo. I didn't touch anything. Husk pressed the emergency button. The elevator started again. Charlie laughed so hard she had to lean against the wall. The powerful lesson from the Overlord negotiations turned out not to be about overlords at all. It was about the hotel learning that refusing ownership did not mean refusing every obligation it found inconvenient. Gojo hated how much he respected that distinction. Chapter 20, Angelic Steel. Carmilla unwrapped the spearhead inside a guarded vault. The metal was dull silver, but the air around it hurt Gojo's eyes. Vaggie stood between him and the table. It came from an exterminator weapon. And it is close to infinity, Gojo said. Carmilla did not move. I need to know whether it can be used against him. You need to know whether it can be used against everyone. She pushed the spearhead across the table with a pair of tongs. The metal stopped before Gojo's coat, then continued by a fraction. Infinity slowed it, but did not make the distance absolute. The 6 eyes showed why. The holy material carried a rule that treated separation as a challenge rather than a fact. Vaggie reached for the weapon. Gojo caught her wrist. Do not touch it barehanded. I know what it is. You know what it was made for. Blue pulled the spearhead sideways. The vault floor cracked under the pressure. Carmilla's guards raised weapons, then lowered them when she shook her head. Gojo sent a thread of cursed energy into the metal. The thread burned away. Reverse cursed technique closed the cut across his palm. Carmilla saw the blood. It can hurt you. It can interrupt me. That is not the same thing. It is the difference between a warning and a plan. He returned the spearhead to the cloth. Carmilla folded the wrapping around it. I will not sell this, she said. Good. Selling it would teach the wrong people what to aim for. Vaggie studied the thin red line on his palm. Gojo smiled at the wound, not because it was harmless, but because it had finally offered a rule he could test. Gojo began at a workshop behind Carmilla's weapons district by asking what had been moved. Carmilla, Vaggie, Gojo, and a wounded courier answered with 3 different versions, and each version placed responsibility somewhere else. Angelic steel entered the hotel through a delivery intended to look like ordinary ammunition. He followed the mismatch through the walls with 6 eyes, tracing ink, heat, residue, and the small physical choices people made when they believed nobody was watching. That metal remembers what it was made to do, Carmilla said. It will not forget because you dislike the memory. The hidden mechanism was not the whole problem. Gojo let 6 eyes trace the metal's command pattern and found that the courier had been marked as a future target. Gojo separated the rule from the person who had abused it and refused to erase the evidence just because it was ugly. The investigation left a wound in the hotel's certainty. Destroying the tracking shard ruined Carmilla's most valuable sample. Husk recorded the names, while Charlie decided which of them still deserved a door. At the end, Carmilla gave the hotel 1 piece of unmarked steel and kept the rest behind a lock only she could open. The answer was incomplete, but it could be checked by someone other than Gojo. Carmilla did not let the spearhead leave the vault. Gojo did not ask her to. The thin cut in his palm had already closed, but the holy residue remained visible to the 6 eyes as a bright grain embedded in the repaired tissue. It was small enough to ignore and strange enough that ignoring it would be stupid. Again, he said. Vaggie turned on him. No. Carmilla's guards looked between them. Gojo lifted his hand. I wasn't asking you. You were asking the woman, holding the thing made to kill us. Carmilla folded her arms, and I was going to say no for a different reason. Gojo looked at both of them and sighed theatrically. Everyone here is becoming responsible. It's exhausting. Carmilla ignored that. She brought out 3 smaller samples instead. A flake shaved from an exterminator spear, a fragment of arrowhead, and a thread of metal no thicker than hair. These are waste pieces, she said. Nothing I would sell, nothing I would trust in a weapon. Perfect. No, Vaggie repeated. Gojo sat on the edge of the vault table. You know more about angelic weapons than either of us. Tell me what I'm missing. That stopped her more effectively than a command. Vaggie looked at the samples. They aren't all equal, she said after a moment. Weapons forged for extermination carry authority from the person who made them, the person using them, and heaven's purpose for the purge. A broken piece keeps some of that, not all. Carmilla nodded, which is why salvaged steel behaves inconsistently. And why one dirty street knife got closer to me than a better demonic weapon, Gojo said. Vaggie gave him a sharp look. You notice that? I notice almost everything. It's a burden. You joke when you're worried. The room went still. Gojo's smile remained, but it no longer hid as much. Sometimes. Carmilla placed the hair-thin fragment inside a clear box. They tested distance, before force. Gojo opened infinity at its normal passive state. Carmilla pushed the box across the table. The metal stopped farther away than the spearhead had. Vaggie adjusted the fragment so the forged edge faced him. The stopping distance changed by less than a finger width. Then Vaggie spoke a word, in the old exorcist tongue. The fragment moved. Not much, barely enough to make the clear box creak. Gojo's expression sharpened. Again. Vaggie repeated the command. The fragment advanced another fraction. Carmilla stepped closer. The word activates purpose. Not purpose, Vaggie said. Recognition. The weapon knows what it is being asked to kill. Gojo lowered infinity. Both women reacted at once. Do not, Carmilla said. Relax. That sentence has preceded most catastrophes I've survived, Vaggie snapped. Gojo held one finger near the box and reinforced only the fingertip with cursed energy. I need to know whether the steel attacks space, cursed energy, the soul, or the category it thinks I belong to. And if it chooses the last one, then I stop being polite. He touched the outside of the box. The fragment jumped. It crossed the remaining distance too quickly for an ordinary blade and struck the inside wall hard enough to crack it. Holy light spread through the glass in a spiderweb. Gojo pulled his hand away. No injury. He smiled. Interesting. Vaggie did not share the mood. It responded to intent. Yes, yours and mine. Carmilla frowned. Yours. I treated it like a threat. It became more of one. They spent the next hour proving that the effect was real. The fragment reacted differently when Gojo ignored it, when he expected injury, when Vaggie named him as a sinner, when she named him as a human, and when she refused to name him at all. The six eyes caught changes too small for anyone else to see. The holy field tightened around familiar labels and weakened around contradictions. When Vaggie called him guest, the fragment did almost nothing. When she called him sinner, it pushed harder. When she called him threat, it burned bright enough to pit the glass. Gojo leaned back. Heaven's weapons like categories too. Carmilla's gaze turned cold. Everything in this city does. Not everything. Vaggie looked at him. Gojo nodded toward the hotel direction beyond the vault wall. Charlie keeps writing rules that leave room for people to leave. That's why the old contracts hate her. Vaggie said nothing for several seconds. Then she picked up the box with tongs. We are done. This time Gojo did not argue. Carmilla locked the samples away and copied the results into 3 separate ledgers. One stayed with her. One went to the hotel. One was sealed for a future witness neither woman named. At the vault door, Carmilla stopped Gojo. You understand what this means. That holy steel can exploit recognition and intention. That if someone learns the exact category your power fails to reject, they will manufacture a weapon around it. Gojo looked at the healed palm. Then I should avoid becoming easy to describe. Vaggie gave a humorless laugh. You were doing that already. On the walk back to the hotel, the street was unusually quiet. Gojo noticed 3 cameras pretending not to follow. Vaggie noticed 2. Do not destroy them, she said. You are getting predictable. Carmilla said selling the information would be dangerous. If the cameras disappear, whoever owns them knows we learned something. Gojo glanced at her. Good. Stop sounding surprised when I make sense. I'm not surprised. I'm enjoying it. Vaggie rolled her eye. At the hotel, Charlie asked how the test went. Gojo answered, with the only result that mattered yet. Infinity isn't broken. Heaven just has better questions. Charlie did not look reassured. That was appropriate. Chapter 21, Gojo's Lunchtime. The hotel kitchen was quiet for exactly 9 seconds. Husk poured coffee. Angel stole a sandwich. Nifty climbed onto the counter to inspect a pie. Charlie tried to read a repair invoice. Gojo sat by the window and watched the reflection in the toaster. The camera was hidden inside the pie. "Do not eat that," Gojo said. Angel froze, with a fork halfway to his mouth. The pie clicked. A tiny lens opened beneath the crust, aimed toward Charlie's papers. Husk swore and reached for a knife. Gojo used Blue to lift the pie without touching it. The camera came free with a thread of contract ink. It had been recording ordinary conversations to identify which guests trusted the hotel enough to speak freely. "That is invasive," Charlie said. "That is breakfast," Husk replied. Nifty caught the camera in a jar. The device began broadcasting a list of names. Gojo pulled the signal through the room and redirected it into the hotel's old intercom. Every speaker in the building repeated the same private inventory at once. The watcher cut the transmission. Angel took the sandwich. "I vote we keep the camera and use it to spy on whoever was spying on us." Gojo looked at the jar. "You are learning." Charlie closed the invoice. "Can we have one meal without someone trying to turn it into leverage?" "Not in hell," Husk said. Gojo let the pie fall into the trash. The kitchen returned to its ordinary noises, but nobody reached for the remaining food without checking it first. The people at the hotel dining room at noon were doing something ordinary when the danger arrived. Charlie, Angel Dust, Husk, and Gojo, with a bowl he could not taste, had been arguing about food, music, work, or who had failed to replace a broken lamp. Charlie tried to make lunch a normal hotel ritual, while a contract mark under the table counted every guest who ate. Charlie tried to keep the ordinary thing alive long enough for everyone to remember what was at stake. "The food is free," Charlie insisted. "The room is not allowed to charge for kindness." Gojo did not take over the room. He placed infinity between the vulnerable and the threat, then asked the residents what they wanted protected. Gojo caught the mark before it could register Angel's meal and forced the ledger to name its vanished owner. Their answer made the defense less efficient and more honest. The dining room lost its inherited hospitality enchantment and had to be rebuilt by hand. Angel complained, Husk swore, and Vaggie moved to the position nobody had thought to guard. When the danger passed, Gojo stayed until the meal was over and described the flavors he could not experience. The ordinary moment returned changed, which was how the hotel knew it had mattered. Chapter 22, Hotel Attention. The lobby filled before noon. New sinners arrived because Gojo's name had begun to sound like a wall. Charlie welcomed them in groups. Vaggie asked each person what they expected. Most wanted protection. One wanted revenge. A child-sized sinner wanted to know whether the hotel could stop an overlord from finding her. Gojo stood beside the front desk. "It cannot," he said. Charlie shot him a look. "We can try." "Trying is not protection." The sinner clutched her bag. "Then why should I stay?" "Because the hotel gives you a room, information, and a chance to choose your next mistake. It does not make you untouchable." The doors opened again. A group of armed visitors entered wearing ribbons printed with Gojo's face. They had come to borrow his reputation for a robbery 2 streets away. Vaggie lowered her spear. "Leave." The leader smiled. "We are guests." Gojo looked at the ribbons. Blue pulled the printed ink off them and gathered it in the air. Each ribbon contained a false claim that the wearer acted under hotel protection. The leader's smile vanished. "You used our name," Charlie said. "Everyone uses names here." "Not ours," Vaggie replied. Gojo folded the ribbons into a single strip and tied it around the leader's wrist. The contract tightened only when he moved toward the door. "Take your robbery elsewhere." The group fled through the lobby, dragging their leader behind them. The child-sized sinner watched the doors close. "Are we safe?" Charlie knelt beside her. Safer than the street. Gojo added, and less safe than you will want. The sinner considered that, then accepted the key Charlie offered. For the first time that day, someone entered without expecting Gojo to be their shield. He found the change more valuable than the crowd. At the hotel roof during a red storm, Gojo set one hand against the nearest surface and let the 6 eyes read the laws hell had embedded in it. Gojo, Charlie, Vaggie, and a circle of watching sinners watched the experiment with different kinds of fear. The storm carried fragments of every rumor about the hotel and made them solid enough to strike the roof. The first test stopped at infinity. The second reached the space beneath it. Gojo smiled only when the third revealed a condition he could name. A rumor is still made of people, Charlie said. That means people can change it. He changed the experiment instead of increasing the force. Go sent Blue through the storm and pulled the false stories apart without erasing the true accusations. Vaggie called the result reckless. Gojo agreed, then marked the safe boundary in chalk where everyone could see it. The measurement demanded a price. One of the hotel wards broke and exposed the building to the district for a night. Reverse cursed technique repaired the damage, but not the information it had purchased. The scene closed when the sinners below saw Charlie repair the ward herself while Gojo held the storm back. Gojo kept the boundary visible and did not pretend the next test would be safer. The red storm left the hotel without its oldest exterior ward. The ward had been ugly, inherited, and vaguely predatory. Nobody missed the contract buried inside it. They did miss what it had done accidentally well. It dampened noise, scattered minor surveillance magic, and kept low-level territory marks from sticking to the brick. By morning, the hotel walls were covered in graffiti. Some of it was political. Gojos Fortress. Charlie's Cult. Free rooms equals free souls. Some of it was less serious. Angel owes ME20, HELLBUCKS. Angel denied everything. Charlie wanted to clean the walls immediately. Gojo stopped her. Why? Because half of it is testing where the marks stick now. Vaggie leaned closer to one painted symbol, territory probe. Exactly. With the old ward gone, anyone could place a weak claim against the exterior and see whether the hotel automatically rejected it. It didn't. That did not mean the claims worked inside. It meant the building had lost its skin. The replacement could not be another inherited contract. Charlie refused. So they built one from scratch. Gojo handled the magical geometry. Vaggie handled threat assumptions. Charlie handled the rules. Husk handled the question nobody else wanted to answer. Who pays for repairs when the ward saves the building but destroys something outside it? Angel handled snacks and insisted this was a formal role. The first design was too strong. Gojo layered infinity-like distance into the outer wall until thrown objects stopped 6 inches from the brick. A delivery box stopped too. The courier pulled. The box would not move closer. That's bad, Charlie said. It's very safe. The hotel has to receive mail. Debatable. They weakened it. Second design. Hostile intent stopped. Ordinary objects passed. Nifty threw a knife while smiling happily. The ward let it through. Vaggie nearly killed both of them. Intent is not enough, she said after the screaming ended. Third design. Declared guest objects passed. Undeclared weapons stopped. Angel walked through, carrying a gun he had forgotten in his coat. The ward slammed him backward into a bush. I object to this technology personally. Charlie wrote another note. The problem was obvious. Every automatic defense eventually needed to classify people. Gojo stood in front of the chalk-covered wall and frowned. We keep rebuilding the thing I hate. Vaggie nodded. because defense requires decisions. Charlie said, then maybe the wall doesn't decide. Maybe it slows things down long enough for us to. Gojo looked at her. That was it. The final ward did not reject. It delayed. Unknown magical marks took longer to attach. Weapons entering through windows slowed enough to trigger an alarm. Surveillance signals distorted unless someone inside actively accepted the connection. Doors stayed ordinary. Guests could still walk in. The building gained seconds, not judgment. They tested it for hours. A contract needle slowed and rang the lobby bell. A delivery package passed. An angry sinner punched the wall and hurt his hand normally. Nifty's knife triggered 3 alarms and embedded itself in a curtain because the physical throw was too close to count as an exterior attack. Vaggie confiscated the knife. Oppression, Nifty whispered. The political test came after dark. A minor gang painted a territory symbol on the alley wall. The new ward did not erase it. It delayed the mark long enough for the hotel residents to notice. Charlie walked outside. Who placed this? 3 gang members stepped forward expecting Gojo. He remained inside. Charlie told them the hotel did not accept the claim. They threatened to enforce it. Vaggie joined her. Angel appeared in the doorway with a gun he had now remembered to declare. Husk stayed at the bar because someone needed standards. The gang looked through the open door and saw Gojo sitting on the stairs doing absolutely nothing. That disturbed them more than if he had come outside. They left. Charlie washed the symbol off by hand. The ward had done exactly what it was meant to do. Not protect the hotel forever. Buy enough time for people to choose what happened next. Chapter 23. Gojo's first Overlord contract negotiation. Valentino's private booth had no windows and too many mirrors. Angel sat across from him with a drink untouched between his hands. Gojo stood behind the booth's curtain, close enough to hear the contract breathing inside the walls. You are not on the guest list, Valentino said. Your guest list is a suggestion. Valentino smiled at Angel. He owes me a favor. I'm offering to reduce the interest. Angel's fingers tightened. You said the appearance would be voluntary. It is. You can volunteer to pay what you owe. Gojo stepped into the booth. The mirrors turned toward him. Valentino's contract was not written on paper. It was distributed across reflected surfaces, each mirror holding one condition. The favor involved Angel's labor, but the hidden clause granted Valentino the right to decide what counted as repayment. Gojo touched the nearest mirror. Infinity stopped the contract's pull. You built a debt that grows whenever the debtor objects. That is called business. It is called a bad design. Blue pulled the mirrors out of alignment. Valentino's contract lost its single voice and began arguing with itself. Angel stood, but did not run. Gojo looked at him. Do you want the favor erased? Angel stared at the contract. I want the part I actually agreed to, nothing more. Gojo separated the clauses. The original favor remained as a thin red line. The interest, the ownership claim, and the right to redefine repayment collapsed into ash. Valentino lunged. Infinity stopped him inches from Gojo's face. You do not get to rewrite my agreements, Valentino hissed. Neither do you. Angel took the remaining line from the air and wrapped it around his own wrist. This is mine now. Valentino's face went blank. They left the booth with the mirrors dark behind them. Angel did not thank Gojo. Gojo did not ask him to. At the hotel, Angel kept the thin red line visible. It was still a debt, but it had a boundary now. In hell, that counted as progress. A public answer was demanded at a back room in the hotel's old records office. Gojo, Charlie, and a sole broker named Morrow stood where the crowd could see them, while every faction tried to make the answer sound like a confession. "You want a chain with one pretty link," Gojo said. "I prefer doors." Morrow offered to protect one hotel guest if Gojo accepted a contract that would make him responsible for all future departures. Gojo let the silence last until the people who had prepared the question began to hear how little of it belonged to them. Charlie spoke before Gojo could turn the moment into a lesson. Charlie asked the guest whose soul was being used to choose, and the guest rejected both the broker and the hotel's protection. Her choice changed the crowd's shape and left Gojo responsible for supporting it rather than replacing it. The political price arrived immediately. The hotel had to accept that a guest could leave without being saved. No one called the result a victory because victory would have made the next demand easier to hide. Instead, Gojo tore the contract only after the guest placed a hand on the paper and withdrew it. The hotel gained no throne, only another night in which its residents could decide what kind of place it would be. Angel kept the remaining favor line around his wrist for 3 days before anyone at the hotel asked why. Most residents assumed it was decoration. Husk recognized the contract and wisely kept his opinion to himself. Vaggie noticed on the first evening, but waited until Angel stopped hiding the wrist under gloves. Charlie lasted until breakfast on the 4th day. "Does it hurt?" Angel looked down at the thin red line. "Emotionally or physically?" "Either. Both is more dramatic." Gojo sat across the table eating cereal that he had declared inferior to every sweet breakfast food ever invented. He did not look up. Charlie sat beside Angel. "You don't have to keep it visible." "I know." "Then why are you?" Angel's grin arrived automatically and failed halfway. "Because if I hide it, I start pretending the whole thing is gone." Gojo stopped eating. The room shifted around the answer. Angel rubbed the line with his thumb. "He still has the original favor. I still said yes to something. I hate that. But I hate the other version more, where he gets to say I never knew what I was doing because I was desperate." Charlie reached for his hand and stopped before touching. "Can I?" Angel looked at her and nodded. She held his wrist carefully. Nothing magical happened. Gojo approved of that more than he expected. Later that afternoon, Valentino sent the collection notice. It arrived as a bouquet. Angel saw the flowers and laughed so hard he nearly fell off the couch. "That asshole has a sense of theater." Vaggie did not laugh. Every flower had a tiny camera embedded in the center. Gojo pulled one free and crushed it between 2 fingers. The card read, "One voluntary appearance, 2 hours, no filming outside the studio, no physical contact, not SBCIFID in the original favor." Charlie read it twice. "That's narrower." "Because he knows we'll read it," Angel said. Gojo looked at him. "Do you want to go?" Angel's face hardened. "No." "Do you want to refuse?" "If I refuse, he says I broke the real part of the deal." "Probably." Charlie started to object. Angel raised a hand. "No, he's right. If I agreed to one appearance, then refusing the appearance because I hate who asked doesn't magically make me innocent." Vaggie said, "That does not mean you go alone." Valentino's notice had anticipated that too. 1 witness permitted. No weapons. No hotel branding. No public broadcast. Angel looked at Gojo. "You are the obvious witness." "Which is why I shouldn't be." Everyone stared at him. Gojo leaned back. "Valentino wants me in the room. If I go, the event becomes about whether he can provoke me. If Charlie goes, it becomes about the hotel. If Vaggie goes, it becomes a security negotiation." Husk set down his glass. "Don't." Angel turned toward him. Husk scowled. "I said don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you already decided." Angel smiled slowly. You'd be perfect. I hate all of you. The studio expected Gojo. It received Angel and Husk. Gojo watched from a rooftop 3 blocks away, not because Angel had asked him to, but because he was not stupid enough to trust Valentino's narrowed language without checking the building around it. The contract allowed one witness inside. It said nothing about a white-haired nuisance sitting outside the defined circle. Inside, Angel walked onto a stage with no cameras running. Valentino sat behind the production desk, furious before anything happened. Where is the freak? Angel looked at the clock. My appearance started 30 seconds ago. You want to waste it asking about another guy. Husk almost smiled. Valentino swallowed his anger and activated the stage lights. The favor was humiliating by design. Not sexual, not violent, not even particularly difficult. Valentino wanted Angel to stand before a room of employees and repeat a statement acknowledging that a prior favor had been owed. He wanted precedent. Angel read the statement. Then he set it down. I'll say the part I agreed to. Valentino's fingers tightened around the desk. You will read the page. No. The contract around Angel's wrist heated. On the rooftop, Gojo felt the line tighten. He did not intervene. Angel's voice shook once and steadied. I accepted entry to your club knowing it came with one appearance. I did not agree that you could decide what the appearance meant. I did not agree that I was property. I did not agree that every future refusal added interest. I owe the appearance. This is it. The red line burned bright. Then it went dark. Valentino stood so violently, his chair fell backward. The contract had accepted Angel's performance. The original favor was complete. No Gojo, no battle, no clever cursed technique, just a debtor saying the actual terms allowed where the creditor could not pretend they meant more. Husk checked the clock. 2 hours. Angel looked at Valentino. He can spend the remaining hour and 56 minutes being mad. They walked out. Gojo was waiting across the street when they emerged. Angel stopped. Were you spying? Observing. That's spying with better hair. Husk kept walking. He didn't help. That's the important part. Gojo looked at Angel's wrist. The red line was gone. Angel covered the bare skin with his other hand. For a second, he looked younger than he ever did at the hotel. I thought it would feel bigger. Most finished debts don't explode, Gojo said. Angel laughed softly. You really suck at emotional moments. I have other talents. Back at the hotel, Charlie did not throw a party. She asked Angel whether he wanted one. He said no. So Husk poured drinks. Nifty brought a cake she had decorated with an anatomically questionable broken chain, and the hotel let the night remain small. Gojo watched Angel sit with his bare wrist on the table where everyone could see it. That felt more important than any contract he could have torn himself. Chapter 24. A Rule Hell Cannot Read. The border gang painted a red line across the street and called it law. Vaggie stopped at the edge. Gojo stepped over it. The gang leader raised a bell-shaped weapon. You crossed without paying. I crossed because the line was ugly. The territory claim activated. Buildings leaned inward. Street signs turned toward Gojo. Every demon on the block felt the district's ownership trying to classify him as trespasser. Vaggie held her spear ready. Gojo, get back. Why? It is not decided what I am. Blue opened beneath the painted line. The street pulled toward the center, dragging paint, chalk, and the gang's boundary markers into a spinning ring. The claim resisted by naming every nearby shop as evidence of ownership. Gojo broke the ring at its weakest point. The street returned to normal. The gang's leader dropped the bell. You cannot erase a territory. I did not erase it. I made it admit it cannot read me. The leader's crew looked at one another. Their law still protected their shops, their hideouts, and their debts. It simply no longer reached across the line to decide what Gojo owed. Vaggie lowered her spear. That is going to make them angry. They were already angry. The leader picked up the bell. What do you want? A street where people can walk without asking your paint for permission. He left the line in place, but cut a clean opening through its contract. Anyone could cross. Anyone who wanted to claim the territory still had to face the gang on ordinary terms. The leader stared at the opening. Vaggie followed Gojo toward the hotel. You gave them a choice. I gave them fewer excuses. The room at the hotel basement, beneath the foundation ward, had been arranged to make the decision look inevitable. Gojo, Vaggie, and a frightened sinner hiding beside the boiler had been given separate seats, separate exits, and one shared document nobody trusted. A rule written into the building before Charlie owned, it tried to define who counted as a guest. Gojo read the space before he read the paper. 6 eyes found the pressure points. Who could leave, who would be blamed, and which silence had been purchased. The hotel can recognize a person without owning the definition of one, Gojo said. The first answer came from someone other than Gojo. He used infinity to hold the ward apart while Vaggie carried the sinner through the space between its categories. The change forced the people in the room to stop treating him as the hotel's spokesman. The consequence arrived before anyone signed. The basement lost its automatic defenses and had to rely on guards again. Gojo did not undo that consequence. He made sure everyone understood why it had happened. When the meeting ended, the new rule was written in Charlie's handwriting, with room for someone to disagree. The hotel remained standing, but its next choice would belong to more than one person. The opening Gojo cut through the borderline became popular before the gang decided whether to hate it. People used it because it was shorter than walking around the territory. Delivery carts used it because the pavement was flatter. Children used it because adults had told them not to. Within 2 days, the clean gap in the red boundary had become a path. The gang leader came to the hotel furious. You made a road through my claim. Gojo looked up from the lobby couch. No, people made a road through the opening. Same thing. Not even close. Charlie invited the gang leader to sit. He refused. Vaggie looked disappointed because the chair near the door had become excellent for difficult visitors. The leader slammed his bell-shaped weapon onto the front desk. My territory protects those shops. If people cross without paying, they use the security without supporting it. That was the first argument he had made that was not entirely stupid. Gojo sat up. Charlie noticed. What does the toll pay for? She asked. The leader hesitated. Husk laughed from the bar. There it is. The toll paid for patrols, street repairs, 2 ward towers, bribes to a larger territory, and the gang leader's personal residence. How much of it is the house? Gojo asked. Leadership is an expense. That's not a number. They demanded records. The gang leader called that insulting. Charlie pointed out that if the opening was going to remain, they needed to know whether crossing actually consumed a service. The records arrived the next morning because the gang was more afraid of Gojo destroying the line than of embarrassment. The numbers were messy. The toll was too high. It was also not entirely fake. The shops inside the territory received patrols, trash removal, and ward maintenance. Travelers crossing the street did benefit from the patrol presence. The old rule simply charged everyone the same amount regardless of use and punished refusal with violence. Charlie proposed abolishing the toll. Husk objected. Everyone stared at him. What if nobody pays, the patrols stop? Then the shops hire private muscle. Then you get 6 smaller gangs charging 6 different prices. Gojo smiled. Husk, civic economist. Die. The solution came from a shop owner who had paid the toll for 19 years. Charge businesses for the services they receive. Don't charge feet for touching pavement. Simple. Terrifying to everyone invested in the old system. The gang would keep shop contracts for patrol and maintenance. Those contracts had to list actual services. Travelers crossed free. Deliveries could pay optional guarded route fees if they wanted gang protection beyond ordinary patrols. The gang leader hated it. His own shop owners supported it. That mattered. He asked what happened if someone crossed the opening and attacked a business. Vaggie answered, then you stop the attacker because you're already paid to protect the business. And if they're too strong? Everyone looked at Gojo. He smiled. Then you ask nicely. The first month was chaotic. The gang lost money from random tolls. It gained more stable contracts from businesses that now knew what they were paying for. 2 shops refused patrol service entirely and discovered they missed it. One returned after a robbery. Another hired its own guard and never came back. The boundary line remained painted across the street. But the opening stayed. Over time, people stopped treating the gap like a rebellion. It became an intersection. Charlie walked through it one afternoon carrying groceries. You know, she said, this is almost normal. Gojo stepped over the faded red paint beside her. Don't say that too loudly. Hell might fix it. Chapter 25. The hotel's new guest. The terrified sinner arrived at the front desk with an overlord mark under his skin. Charlie offered him water. Vaggie offered him a chair. Gojo offered neither until he had seen the mark move. It was not a tattoo. It was a tracking claim threaded through the sinner's pulse. If the hotel accepted him without changing the terms, the claim would reveal every room he entered. Can you remove it? Charlie asked. Not without making him visible to the person who owns it. The sinner gripped the chair. Then I cannot stay. Gojo crouched in front of him. You can stay. You cannot pretend staying has no cost. He showed the sinner the mark's 3 paths, one to the overlord, one to the street, and one to the hotel door. The sinner chose the third. Gojo used blue to pull the tracking thread away from the pulse. The mark split, leaving a small red point beneath the sinner's eye. It no longer revealed the hotel. It revealed only the fact that the sinner had chosen refuge. Charlie accepted the key. You are welcome here. The sinner looked at Gojo. What do I owe you? Nothing. If you want to stay alive, learn faster. The mark flared once in the hallway. Somewhere far away, an overlord realized the signal had changed. Vaggie moved to the door. They will come. Charlie closed the lock. Then they can ask. Gojo smiled at the red point beneath the guest's eye. And this time, the guest gets to answer. The first movement at the lobby during a rain of red ash was fast enough to make the watching crowd believe the scene had already chosen its winner. Charlie, Vaggie, Angel Dust, and a sinner named Moth were caught between the threat and the people behind them. I am not asking you to forgive me, Moth said. I am asking for one night without the mark deciding first. Moth arrived with a suitcase and a debt mark that made every hotel door recoil from her. Gojo moved only after the danger revealed its condition. Infinity caught the obvious attack. Blue answered the hidden angle. The final decision was left to the person standing nearest the exit. That person chose badly, then chose again. Gojo separated the mark from Moth without erasing the crimes attached to it. Vaggie's weapon, Charlie's voice, or a stranger's hand changed the result before Gojo could make the easy answer permanent. The cost was visible in the ground, the broken object, and the people who would have to return tomorrow. The debt broker felt the severed connection and sent hunters to the hotel. By the time the street quieted, Moth received a room key that opened only one door, but it opened when she used it. The witnesses had seen power, but they had also seen someone refuse to use all of it. Moth's first night at the hotel was quiet until the mark under her eye began screaming. Not aloud. Only she and Gojo could hear it. Moth woke at 2 in the morning, clawing at her face. The red point beneath her eye had opened into a thin ring, pulsing with an overlord's attempt to re-establish the old tracking route. Gojo was outside her door before she called for help. He did not enter. Moth. Inside, breathing hitched. It's back. Part of it. Get it out. Gojo put one hand on the door frame. Open the door. Why? Because I am not using blue through a wall next to your head. That got the door open. Moth stood in the room shaking, one hand over the mark. Charlie arrived in pajamas. Vaggie followed carrying a spear because she apparently slept within reach of one. The mark was not trying to reveal the hotel anymore. It was trying to make Moth move. Every pulse carried a direction. Leave the room, descend the stairs, walk east, return to the person who had owned the original claim. Compulsion, Vaggie said. Moth squeezed her eyes shut. I can feel the street. Gojo crouched near her. Can you refuse? Yes. Then do that first. Charlie started to protest at the harshness. Moth beat her to it. I'm trying. Good, keep trying while we figure out the rest. Gojo saw the structure. The original tracking contract had been split. Moth chose the hotel route. That preserved the fact of refuge. Her old overlord could no longer see the rooms, but he could still see that she had chosen against him. Now he was pushing on that choice. Gojo could sever the mark entirely. That would make Moth invisible to the claim. It would also erase the evidence that she had actively chosen refuge, which mattered if the dispute ever reached someone who cared about consent. I can remove all of it, Gojo said. Moth looked at him. But then the argument becomes his word against yours, about whether you ever left willingly. Vaggie understood. Keep the choice, kill the command. That's the idea. Moth sat on the edge of the bed. Do it. This time Gojo asked again. You understand the mark stays? Yes. It may hurt. Yes. And if you change your mind? Gojo. He smiled. Right. Blue formed as a microscopic pull around the outer edge of the mark. The command resisted. Moth gasped and grabbed Charlie's hand. The red ring stretched away from her skin in strands. Each strand carried a direction, a demand, a memory of where she was supposed to return. Gojo separated them one at a time. East. Obey. Report. Return. The final strand said belong. Infinity stopped it before it could snap back. Gojo crushed that one. The mark beneath Moth's eye remained as a single red point. Silent. Moth opened her eyes. I can't feel the street. Good. Can he feel me? He can feel that you left, nothing else. Moth laughed once and started crying immediately afterward. Charlie stayed with her. Gojo and Vaggie left the room. In the hallway, Vaggie said, You almost removed all of it. Yes. Why didn't you? Gojo looked at the closed door. Because she asked me not to erase the part that was hers. That answer followed Vaggie down the hall. The next morning, Moth asked Charlie for a job. Not because the room cost anything. Because she hated sitting still. Charlie offered 3 options and made sure each one had wages. Moth chose laundry. Nifty declared this a mistake because Moth folded towels incorrectly. The argument sounded almost normal. The red point under moths, I never vanished. She stopped hiding it. Chapter 26. The Overlord Who Doesn't Exist. Vox Tech's classification floor had 600 screens and no category for Gojo. One clerk labeled him sinner. Another labeled him unregistered overlord. A third filed him under angelic anomaly and immediately deleted the file when the system rejected the term. Vox watched from the central display. "Pick a label," he ordered. "The system keeps refusing," a clerk said. Gojo appeared on every screen at once. He had not entered the building. He had followed the signal from the hotel through the network and used blue to pull the classification files toward a single point. "Your system is trying to decide whether I can be owned." Vox's face filled the largest monitor. "Everything can be categorized." "Then categorize this." Gojo released the pull. Every screen displayed the same blank field. The cursor typed one phrase: "Does not consent to your definition." Vox sent a security program through the network. Infinity stopped it at the boundary between signal and cursed energy. The program froze, unable to reach the source. "You are wasting resources," Vox said. "You built a floor dedicated to wasting them." The clerks watched their work disappear. Gojo spared the raw footage, but removed every conclusion attached to it. When the screens returned, the system listed him as unknown. Vox stared at the word. "That is not a category. It is the most accurate thing you have produced." Gojo cut the feed. The classification floor remained intact, but every clerk would now have to explain why a blank field had become the most expensive record in the building. Gojo began at a records vault below an abandoned bank by asking what had been moved. Gojo, Husk, and a clerk whose name had been removed from every ledger answered with 3 different versions, and each version placed responsibility somewhere else. The vault contained contracts attributed to an overlord who did not exist and payments made by people who remembered meeting him. He followed the mismatch through the walls with 6 eyes, tracing ink, heat, residue, and the small physical choices people made when they believed nobody was watching. "An empty name can still collect a debt," Husk said. "That is the worst kind of customer." The hidden mechanism was not the whole problem. Gojo followed the pattern through the walls and found the real owner was a network of frightened clerks. Gojo separated the rule from the person who had abused it and refused to erase the evidence just because it was ugly. The investigation left a wound in the hotel's certainty. Exposing the network destroyed the only protection those clerks had. Husk recorded the names, while Charlie decided which of them still deserved a door. At the end, Husk opened the vault doors and told the clerks to write their own names back into the books. The answer was incomplete, but it could be checked by someone other than Gojo. The blank category became famous inside Vox Tech before Vox managed to delete it. Clerks copied screenshots. Assistants whispered about the file marked unknown. Someone printed the phrase "does not consent to your definition" on a coffee mug and was fired before lunch. By evening, 3 independent gossip accounts were selling blurred pictures of the classification screen. Vox ordered the entire floor isolated. Then he discovered isolation was exactly what Gojo wanted. The next signal did not come from the hotel. It came from inside the building. A maintenance technician on the classification floor had spent 6 years correcting mislabeled files and being told the errors were harmless because the labels only affected advertising. After Gojo's blank category appeared, the technician searched old rejection logs. She found thousands. Sinners whose species had been guessed incorrectly. Residents marked as debtors after debts were paid. Workers listed under former employers because nobody had filed the right release. People whose names remained tied to neighborhoods they had fled decades earlier. The system had been wrong constantly. It had simply never been wrong about anyone powerful enough to make the error expensive. The technician copied the logs. Vox learned about it when half the screens on the classification floor stopped responding. "Find her," he ordered. Security found the technician in the archive lift with a drive pressed to her chest. They also found Gojo leaning against the wall beside her. He had not teleported into the building. He had walked in through the service entrance wearing a stolen visitor badge and a smile that convinced two guards they had already checked him. Vox appeared on the lift monitor. "You are inside my building." Gojo looked around. The architecture is worse in person. The technician's knees nearly failed. "I didn't call him," she said quickly. "She didn't," Gojo agreed. "Your system did." Vox's screen brightened. "Give me the drive." The technician looked at Gojo. He shook his head. "Don't ask me." Her grip tightened. That was the point. She looked at the security team blocking the lift doors, then at the monitor. "No." Vox's face distorted with static. "You signed an employment contract." "I signed a confidentiality clause for customer information. These are error logs about the company. The company owns the logs. Then the company can explain them in court." Gojo smiled. Vox shut off the monitor. The security team moved. Infinity stopped the first baton. Gojo did not hit anyone. Blue opened beneath the guards' belts and pulled their weapon clips to the ceiling, leaving four professionals suddenly arguing with empty hands. The technician stared. "Walk," Gojo said. "Where?" "You were the one who stole the drive. You should probably have a destination." She swore at him and pressed the lift button for the lobby. "Good." They rode down 40 floors while Vox tried 6 different ways to stop the elevator. Doors locked. Blue pulled them open. The car halted between floors. Gojo shifted the counterweight 3 centimeters and made the system decide moving was safer than staying. A digital contract filled the emergency screen and demanded acknowledgement of building policy. Gojo covered it with his hand until the technician could press the mechanical override. At floor 12, she finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" "I'm not. You are standing between me and an overlord's security department." "I'm helping the interesting part." "Which is?" "You found evidence because the system failed to classify me. I want to know what else it failed to classify." She stared at him. "That might be worse." "Probably." The lobby doors opened. Vox was waiting on every screen. The building's front exit sealed behind a wall of blue electricity. "Last chance," Vox said. "Employee returns proprietary data. Guest leaves, nobody gets hurt." The technician looked at the drive. "If I give this back, you'll erase it. I will correct the issue internally." Gojo laughed. The sound carried through the lobby. "That's the line, really." Vox ignored him. "This doesn't concern you. Your system tried to file me as property. You made it concern me." The front barrier strengthened. Gojo could have broken it. Instead, he turned to the lobby full of ordinary Vox tech employees, watching from desks and balconies. "Does anyone here know whether she is allowed to leave?" Silence. A receptionist slowly raised her hand. Vox's face snapped toward her monitor. She swallowed. Employment Contract Section 12. Security can detain company devices, not employees. Another worker spoke from the stairs. And if the device contains evidence of internal fraud, the retention clause is suspended pending review. Vox's screens flickered. Gojo pointed at the barrier. "Sounds like your building is holding the wrong thing." The front door remained closed for 5 more seconds. Then someone in legal disabled it remotely. The technician walked out carrying the drive. Gojo followed. Vox did not stop them, because stopping them now would produce a cleaner story than the leak itself. At the hotel, Charlie refused to publish the logs immediately. "People's names are in here," she said. "If we expose the errors, we expose them too." The technician looked horrified. She had been so focused on proving the system wrong that she had not considered who the records described. Gojo watched her realize it. The next 2 days were spent redacting names. It was boring, slow, infuriating work. It was also the first time the hotel's fight with Vox produced something more useful than a broken screen. When the report finally went public, it did not say Vox Tech lies about everyone. It said Vox Tech's classification system had a measurable error rate, hid correction requests, and continued monetizing outdated labels after employees reported them. Vox called it sabotage. Nobody cared as much as he expected. The dangerous part was that ordinary people